Hey everybody, Speedy here, Bennu Studio Inc. Back to continue the Tales from the Drafting Table series. This is episode 5, working on the Wolverine montage. Yeah, I'm in my workout clothes. Um, to be honest, it's hotter than the devil's balls down here. I finished building the studio as far as its functionality, but I haven't finished completely, as in making it comfortable. There's sometimes a day where it's raw, it's very hot. It doesn't matter. I keep working. This is my life's goal. So, without further ado, let's get to more drawing. Okay, so back at it. Let's continue on with this tower. In terms of shoring all of this up, the tower is pretty important. So I can kind of make sure the tower still essentially has its like phallic power to it. You know, it's dominant with without getting lost by me adding elements into it. So I think we're at that point where before I switch over to this side and before I decide how to fill in this area here, we need to like shore up the tower more. And we started at the end of episode 4. We are going to go ahead and pick up and finish it off here. Um, let's see. So again, I will. I'm completely open to making adjustments, though. Also, when I see a place where it would be better, I'm willing to erase and stuff. I did a lot of that last episode. I feel pretty good about where we are currently, so I don't feel a need to do it right now. But I'm still amenable to the idea that I still may have to. That's what a draft is about. You work out everything, and then you refine as you go, and I think next episode is actually where we should be at a point of doing refinement and begin it being a lot easier to see, and it takes a kind of shape, if you will. But like I said, let's get this tower worked out. Yeah. Anyway, like one of the things in Western culture that I noticed around 82, despite being kind of young and everything, one thing that was like hammered into me very early, and it was like I said, because I had a very early experience with formal art training, primarily watercolor. Now, we didn't do a lot on drawing, we did sacred geometry. So I was doing like a lot of stuff with a compass and mostly working on geometric shapes. That ended up being invaluable for my later career creating because I mean, it gave me the visual discipline that I needed to be like, you know, exceptional at composition, which composition is it's the whole point of it. You know, if you don't have good composition, your techniques aren't going to matter. You know, the layout and so forth is that important to get right. And geometry is a massive, massive factor in proper layout. Um, See, even untrained eyes will recognize when the symmetry is off. They will recognize it. So it's really important for us to keep those fundamentals tight and to keep that like in mind that like even an untrained eye can tell when the composition just does not function properly. It's not in balance. And so that's the other very major reason why you need to pay attention to those factors. Um, yeah. Thing about this, you got to remember scale. This tower is a lot bigger in my drawing than it is in the original. So it's tempting to kind of do things smaller than they need to be, but I'm fighting that right now. Um, Using my pencil as a quick ruler to gauge like the size and so forth. Because, like I said, if your symmetry is off, if it doesn't look balanced, even an untrained eye is going to recognize that it's imbalanced. They won't recognize where or why it's imbalanced. They'll just know that something is off about the art when they look at it. And that's our responsibility as creatives to make sure we pay attention to that factor. Okay, it's still recording, right? Okay, apparently it got cut off while I was recording. Like I said at the intro of this one, we're in the middle of a heat wave and it's hot. Um, I got the infrastructure of the studio in place where I can use it, but it's not comfortable by any means. But I don't let things like weather get in my way. When you really think about it, ancient people didn't either. And unfortunately, me not knowing, I did a lot of artwork that didn't get recorded. So I'm going to keep my hands out of this so I can, in editing, zoom in so everybody can see more of what I've drawn a little more clearly. Because really, throughout the series so far, because it's pencil, you can't see it that well. But I focused more in on the stories and things like that than I did it necessarily being able to be seen real well, because I felt like as the series progressed, you were going to be able to see it develop more and more, and it'll get darker as I get more honed in on it. Um, so I did get the tower done. I did add some elements. Like I said, when I zoom in, those will be a lot more obvious, and the overall picture will become a lot more obvious than it has been in the other ones. And I thought with this heat wave and the camera cutting me off like halfway because of the heat and everything, and me not recognizing it, that this would be a good time in the series to just pause and kind of zoom it in and allow you to see the elements a little bit better that I've been drawing on, and a little bit less about the stories, although I have some to share. So far, this process has been illuminating because, like I said, I was 10 years old in 1982, and these books had a different meaning to me when I was 10 years old than they do now. Like, part of the process of putting this montage together has shown me how much I've grown and matured, and how much my study of like Jungian alchemy and psychology and my training in studying humans and human behavior and patterns and my pattern recognition skills has like really sharpened as I've matured. And coming back to this allowed me to see the story so differently than I did when I was younger. Um, and that's part of where some of the discussions that were in the other two episodes discussing honor from the masculine perspective in episode 3, which like I said, I'm a female, so I'm only ever going to have a periphery gnosis from people I know who've told me things and patterns of behavior that I've studied. So, I mean, I can read people incredibly well because I've spent my whole life studying humans. I'm a people watcher. I listen, I observe body language, I pick up on patterns. I pick up on their unconscious behavior patterns too, things people aren't even aware they're doing themselves, their own tells, if you will. Um, and the more you study things like body language and facial expressions, well, that's part of being able to properly recreate humans when you're drawing them and telling stories about them is studying them. People don't realize your face, the color pigmentation of your face, the color of your lips, the behavior of your eyes. There's so many things that show when you're lying to somebody. Like, I can tell when somebody's lying to me. Now, I can't always tell without putting a little thought into it and observing the pattern of behavior as to whether or not that person realizes they're lying, because people lie to themselves, and since they're lying to themselves, they naturally are lying to people outside of themselves because they're lying to themselves. And that's an unconscious behavior sometimes, not intentional. And so, not all lying is malicious. Some lying is literally a lack of self knowledge of the person you're interacting with. They don't know themselves very well, so they haven't confronted themselves and they haven't done their inner work. Most people I've observed have no idea that you're supposed to do that. And so they're just kind of almost like feral. they follow the rules of society, what they how they interpret them, but they don't realize that they're not as fully developed as humans as they can be. They kind of stop after school, and they learn from experience, but they very much learn from a very narrow perspective. They don't really put on the shoes of the other people around them or the other person they're having the experience with. They purely see out of their own filter and don't really have the ability to wear other people's shoes. And that's kind of normal. I think that comes with where we are as a society, where everything's like wage slave, everything's in a hurry, everything's delivered in short, concise bits of information, and everything is shallow and lacks depth. For somebody who's got a great deal of depth, this world is a prison. It's part of why I lean towards a Gnostic perspective on things. Um, I really do believe there's somatic, psychic, and pneumatic layers to life. People living in these different layers, people living in between the two layers. And I've experienced and encountered all three. All three. I drift in and out of Sijic and pneumatic, rarely in pneumatic, because truthfully, pneumatic is for things like Buddha and Jesus and, Sun Tzu and, Jane. And so, like, I can have those higher pneumatic experiences from time to time. I primarily have them when I'm working on artwork. It's a literal transcending. You leave your body, you don't feel your body. A perfect example of this is when this got cut off. One of the things that made me stop was that I recognized that I was getting the paper wet from my own sweat. It wasn't, oh man, I'm hot. I didn't realize I was hot. I didn't even realize I was sweating until it impacted the work I was doing a little bit. So that kind of is somewhat of the pneumatic experience where you're all mind, you're all energy, you're not physical, you're not connected to the material at all, you're in that other place. So art is historically always had kind of a sacred component to it. It's like praying. It's a lot like praying, and I do view it as me giving to my ancestors. I have these skills and I have these gifts, and they've come from a lifetime of training and observing. And I feel like when I go into this experience, when I have this kind of Sijic experience, I'm paying tribute to my ancestors. I'm here because of them. That can never be forgotten. We too often do actually forget that we're standing on the shoulders of giants. We're standing on the shoulders of survivors, and there's something beautiful about that. And unfortunately, the way our education and our public perspective of the past is very warped. We look back and we're like, oh, they were primitive. I don't know about that. I'm not really sure. Like I mentioned in one of my separate videos that was talking about an update for the studio in general, experience I had firsthand was I understand Cassandra's position and how much it must have hurt to be in her position, where you're telling the truth and everybody around you is lying because they have something to protect, and you don't. You don't. The only thing that matters is the truth, especially for somebody who's in that like Sijic and pneumatic kind of flow of life. The truth really is the only thing that matters, especially for artists. We're in the business of transmitting the truth. And this series really woke up something in me. Um, I understood for a long time, since I was about 10 years old, that I have super heightened pattern recognition, that I could read the energy of people, that I could tell when they're lying to me. I could tell when they're lying to themselves. I could tell when they're lying to others. I can tell when it's malicious and when it's unconscious, um, because of training to understand humans, so that I could replicate them and I could replicate their worlds, so that I can mirror their worlds and their culture back to them. And that's what Miller and Claremont were doing in this, and that's what all creatives are doing, including musicians. And it's amazing how many people love music but completely have no idea what the lyrics are saying, and they're singing along. They know the lyrics verbatim, but they don't actually understand what's being said to them. you know, like a perfect example would be like Ozzy Osbourne. How many times is that guy accused of being a Satanist? He was a pious dude. He wasn't a Satanist, but he was a highly intelligent and highly developed human who had an amazing understanding of philosophy and understanding of human behavior and behavior patterns, and so much so that in his music and in his lyrics, he was calling out that behavior. He was calling out that behavior, and people don't look at the depth. Artists are about the depths in life. Um, we see what you don't see, and that's on purpose, just because we can't do our job as creatives if we don't see beyond the shallow life, if we don't see beyond the shallow end. Um, so yeah, I'm trying my best to keep my hands out of it and not draw in this particular part, but tell stories a little bit more, because I already did a lot of work off camera and I didn't intend for it to happen that way. Um, and yeah, but the thing that's in this series though is that it's a clash of cultures, but it's also a clash of time periods too. And that's something I didn't cover in the other videos. There's more than this East versus West understanding of honor and understanding of what's proper behavior. There is more going on. There's also a clash of time periods. You have modern Japan in collision with ancient Japan, and it's represented in the character Shinjin. He's clinging to tradition to save himself from his own lack of honor, his own failures, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying anything against tradition. Tradition has value, but when we retire a tradition, it's literally because that tradition was detrimental to the future of a culture. And that's why it was retired, is because it wasn't serving the culture anymore. It wasn't serving the people anymore. But I don't believe that any of our ancient traditions should be out and out destroyed, because technically we need to have them. That's what museums are for. It's the material collection of what we used to be, so that we understand why it's valuable to continue to be what we are and to continue to grow. And then there's also some traditions that are super ancient that we should never let go of, like making mandalas. Now, I have a dispute with Western archaeologists and scientists on the subject of mandalas. They have this idea that it's only polycultures that did it, and only like Asia and India and so forth that did it, and that the West didn't also do it. And I disagree with them. I think if you look at the sculptures, think if you look at Karnak, I think if you look at the North, I think if you look at Ireland, I think if you look at Greece, if you look at Italy and the Roman Empire, you look at Carthage, they were all actually also doing it in their own unique way, but they were all also following sacred geometry. And a study was done in the Amazon back in like 2008, where they had discovered that geometry is innate. Humans innately understand geometry. They may not understand the totality of it, meaning that they're educated in how to measure it, how to use it in like a modern sense, but they do actually know how to use it innately. They went and visited an Amazon tribe that had no contact with the outside, no technology, and essentially administered them an oral pictorial geometry test. And they could identify everything. None of it was a mystery to them. It was natural. We naturally recognize geometry in life. In a way, I think we train ourselves out of it. We train ourselves out of it so that we can be good factory workers. But artists and creatives, we study that sacred geometry. And my first mentor was a math teacher who happened to be a watercolor artist. And so he taught me sacred geometry at a super young age. And its core value, you can't be a creative without understanding completely sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is how nature makes things. So if you want to replicate nature, you got to know nature's rules. And nature's rules are found in sacred geometry. And that's what the making of mandalas are. And that's how they can resonate across cultures that have never even met each other, are replicating and doing it. And like I said, I'm in dispute with Western scholars who say the West didn't do it. I say bullshit, they definitely did. Go take a look at the Celtic knot. Go take a look at, there's a lot of examples. Look at the Greek key. You could argue it's possibly Phoenician, but look at it. Look at the patterns. Look at the patterns on pottery back, 30,000 years ago. We absolutely were doing our own form of mandala. And so it's universal. It's not one of those, oh, these cultures did it, but, Aborigines did it and people in India did it, but people in the West didn't. No, we did too. The fact that we just can't recognize that we were doing it too because we were doing it in our own way. Um, we weren't doing it exactly like them, but we were 100% using geometry and patterns and things like that in our artwork. We look at it like it's just abstract. No, 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 no. It's not. It's just different than other people's interpretation of sacred geometry, but we were definitely doing it. Heck, we took it to the point of literally mathematically codifying it. So we definitely were involved in it. And it's definitely represented in the West. I may do a series about mandalas because I enjoy doing them just because it's a good mental exercise and a good way to sharpen your skills with geometry. Um, anyway, the thing is, one of the things about growing up in the household we did, so just to put aside my artistic training at a young age, I happen to just come from one of those households that is obsessed with knowledge and obsessed with learning. And we traveled a lot. And everywhere we were, no matter how small the place was, we always found the museum. No matter how small it was, how insignificant the subject of the museum might have been. We always found them and we always visited them because that's the truest way to get to know people in a place that you're visiting is to go to the museum and find out who they used to be while you're out there experiencing who they currently are. I mean, the truth is we can't know ourselves without knowing where we were and who we used to be. And so, you know, I love that. We went to all kinds of places too. I mean, we've been all over the world, and everywhere we went and experienced the old castles of the castle age of Europe. Every place we went and experienced their archaic culture as much of that material culture was still available to experience. And so that definitely had an impact and a great impact on me as an artist. So even if my parents initially didn't want me to be one, because they know it's almost a death sentence in America to be one, um, you know, I still ended up one, and they inadvertently actually helped me. They helped me, turning me on to science, turning me on to math, making sure that I got a taste of every culture that we were around by going to the museums and things like that, and learning about our own country through the museums and stuff. Um, and so to me, that's the ultimate field trip. Like that's what I did all growing up, and I still do. Every time I go to visit a place, I always check out what museums are there before I go, so I can make sure to visit them if I've never been to them. And some of them I love so much I revisit. Um, and I highly recommend that. Yeah, you can just go to the amusement park and just go play, but honestly, you can play with your mind too. You can let your mind have a little food and a little fun. You can feed that inner child as well. You know. Anyway, yeah, I think we'll just wrap it up here. It'll be cut off, you know. But it is actually hot, and I don't want to lose like recording ability like I did the last two times. So let's just move on, and hopefully tomorrow will be cooler. All right, everybody. Whew, this one's been a rough one. Apparently, my camera cut off part of the way through drawing, so there's going to be a gap where there's no drawing done. It's just already finished. Didn't mean for it to happen, but like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's hot. I'm in the middle of the heat wave, um, but nothing stops me ultimately. I find a way through it. So what I did at the tail end is I spliced together the two different videos I was able to get. And the last half of this, I keep my hands out of it and I don't draw. I tell the stories and I communicate, but it's so that I can really zoom in and give you guys a chance to see the pencil work a little better. Pencil itself doesn't translate very well to camera. I was aware of that when I started the series. I'm just doing this to eventually, as it gets developed, it will start showing up a lot better. And so I'm fine with how the first part of it goes because it's still got the stories, it's still got the discussion of the reference materials and things like that. And it's tales from the drafting table, not finals from the drafting table. This series is about how my process works as far as prepping to go do a final piece of artwork. So anyway, I appreciate everybody who's come and check it out. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day, and I hope everything good that you're wishing for in your life becomes manifest. I really do. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye-bye.